A very pleasant morning to all the students of class plus 1B. Rather, I would say, I would like to say that a pleasant morning to all the would-be doctors. Fine. So, being medical students, obviously, you're planning to be doctors. And this chapter, birth, is actually going to showcase the process, how there are a lot of mental pressures upon a doctor. Fine. So the story is of a young doctor, Dr. Andrew, in which how in spite of being going, like he's going through a lot of mental pain in his personal life, even then how he handles one complicated case of his life. Fine. So one or the other day you will be like handling your first case in whatever area you will be choosing, say it cardiology, or you want to be gynecologist, or whatsoever branch of science you will be, medical science you will be entering. Pressures are always there. Pressure of performance. This is called performance pressure. So, and you know, at the very first day when you will be handling your patient independently, that will be the most difficult day of your life, because you are having expectations from yourself. You will be having self doubts also. What will happen to my patient? How I'm going to treat or how I'm going to operate upon that person? Fine, especially surgeons, those who are surgeons, those who will be surgeons also, they will be also under pressure. So medical students, this is a must read for all of you. So please open your books, and I will be sharing the screen, no doubt, but you keep your books with you. Okay. So let me introduce the characters. So maximum students have joined. Now let me start. Dr. Andrew, he's the protagonist of the chapter, and he is the young doctor. Fine. And he is just recently completed his, you can say, studies, and he has become a doctor recently only, and he does not have that much experience that he can handle the cases all alone. Okay, so recently passed out doctor, you can say Dr. Andrew is. Then we have Morgans. Let me tell you about Morgan family. Joe Morgan, he's like man in his 40s. Fine. And his wife, Mrs. Morgan, both husband and wife, Mr. Joe Morgan and Mrs. Morgan, they, you know, didn't have a child, and they were expecting their first child after 20 years of marriage. Fine. So this is a blessing by God to them, that how after 20 years they are going to have a baby, and they are so excited about it. Fine. And then we have one more Morgan character, Mrs. Morgan's mother. Fine. So one old lady she is, and she's there with the couple in the, you can say, need of the hour. So this is the time when they are expecting, within days they are expecting their first baby. Fine. And after 20 years of marriage, you can well imagine how important babies are important for all of us. But after 20 years of marriage, they are going to have it. So this becomes so precious for them. They have been waiting for this moment. And then we have one midwife, you know that during the process of birth, we need a nurse also, and midwife is there. You can say to help in the process, she's there. Then we have Mrs. Morgan's, then we have Christine. Christine is a passive character in the story. Actually, Dr. Andrew, he fell in love with a girl named Christine. And, you know, that's why I was asking you to join this period, because, you know, being a human being also, obviously, firstly, we go through a lot of pressures in our lives. Fine. We have personal problems also in future also. Definitely, you cannot say that you will live life without problems. Problems will be there, but how you are going to segregate your personal life from your professional life, we have to learn from Dr. Andrew here. So Dr. Andrew was going through the mental agony just before he is going to help the Morgan family. Clear? So he had a breakup with Christine. He was going, you can say, through tough times. He was quite depressed and dejected at that time. And whether he is going to let that feeling overpower upon him, or he's going to help the Morgan couple to reach the goal, let's see that. Okay, that is to be read, and very beautiful chapter it is. Fine. So this chapter, you cannot say, okay, this is like, you know, an eye opener for all of us, that how birth is a very, you can say, precious moment in everybody's life. You ask your mother how she felt when she held you in her arms for the first time. So it's that important. Fine. I have written efforts over there. Sorry. Efforts. While writing, I missed one letter. Clear? So these are the characters. I told you, Jabanpreet, you just joined. So please go through the video, then you'll understand. Then theme, efforts put in by medical practitioners. Fine, these days we are talking about frontline warriors. We are talking about, you were giving due weightage to doctors. But you can say this chapter speaks about how efforts are being put up by medical practitioners. So it's a commendable, you can say, homage to them. Then everything is possible if you are determined. This is also one of the themes. If you are determined, if you have a positive attitude, be optimistic and prove yourself. If you have that, determination, keep being a doctor, I have to prove myself, definitely it's going to be okay, all is well. And, and you have trust on yourself, only then you'll be able to succeed in life. Clear? Then keep your personal and professional life separate. There will be days, gloomy days of your life, when you are operating upon someone and you had a bad day at home, when you had some problem, when there are deaths and destructions and gloominess in our personal lives. But even then we have to put up a brave face. We have to, be mentally strong to handle the patient. Fine. It goes in each and every profession. Fine. So we have to keep our personal and professional life separate. We cannot intermingle them. Even if you will, it can affect your personal life as well if you are so busy in your professional life. But when you're working, give your 100% at that time. Carpe diem, live in that moment. Okay, so breathe in present moment. That is the only mantra of keeping that segregation of personal and professional life. So all set, characters and themes clear to you? Yes, children, tell me quickly. We're going to read the chapter now. Characters sabko clear hai? Dr. Andrew, young doctor who's going to handle the Morgan family. Those who are expecting the first child after 20 years. This is chapter number 7. I'm going to share the screen also. Please open your books alongside. It's page number 65 of your book. Fine. Is it visible to you, beta? Screen clearly visible to you all? Yes, Anjali, Manjot, Divnu, tell me. Sometimes we do share, but it's not visible. Okay, fine. Let's continue. So this chapter by A.J. Cronin, in this excerpt from the Citadel, Andrew Manson, newly out of medical school, has just begun his medical practice as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in the small Welsh mining town of Blenheim. As he is returning from a disappointing evening with Christine, the girl he loves, he is met by Joe Morgan. Joe and his wife, who have been married nearly 20 years, are expecting their first child. So this is the introduction. So this is an excerpt, beta. Excerpt means part. जो Citadel, उसका जो work है A.J. Cronin का The Citadel, उसमें से एक part उठाया गया, and this is your chapter now. Fine. And now let me introduce the character Andrew Manson. He is a newly passed out, we can say, medical practitioner. And he has just begun his medical profession. And he had worked as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in Blenheim. Fine. This jagah pe as an assistant, he has worked, but independently, he has not served a single patient even. So he's returning because he has personal life. Obviously, he had a very bad evening with Christine. He broke up with his girlfriend and now he's going all alone. And then while going back, he met Mr. Joe Morgan. And Joe Morgan and his wife, they are expecting their first child. Okay. Though it was nearly midnight, when Andrew reached Brangar, he found Joe Morgan waiting for him, walking up and down with short steps between the closed surgery and the entrance of the house. At the sight of him, the burly driller's face expressed relief. Burly driller. Burly is a strong build. Fine. Driller is his profession. I'm talking about Joe Morgan here. Okay. So they are saying, though it was nearly midnight. So what is the time when Andrew is coming back? It is the midnight. Fine, तो रात का time है, and at about 12 or 1 he's coming back, and when he reached Branger, the place, उसको Mr. Joe Morgan मिलते हैं, and he had been, walking up and down, and he had been waiting for the doctor, and between the closed surgery and the entrance of the to the house, जैसे ही डॉक्टर देखता है that a strong built driller, then he showed that he changed his expression when he saw somebody is there waiting for me. He changed his expression, though he was very sad that day, but he changed his face. Fine. Hey doctor, I'm glad to see you. I've been back and forward here this last hour. The missus wants ye before time too. Before time, sometimes it is in God's hand when the baby will arrive. So he says that this is though not the right time, but before time, my missus, she's expecting her child, and we need your help. Andrew abruptly recalled from the contemplation of his own affairs, told Morgan to wait. Contemplation, when you're brooding upon, when you're thinking upon, a thought process is going on in your mind. So he was already worried about his own personal life, how he had bad time with Christine, and how he broke up with her. And now, suddenly he had to switch from his personal dejection to his professional life. So, okay, wait. He went into the house for his bag. Then together they set out for number 12, Blainla Terrace. The night air was cool and deep with quite mystery. Usually so perceptive, Andrew now felt dull and listless. He had no premonition. Premonition means pre-idea that this night call would prove unusual, still less that it would influence his whole future in Blenheim. He is residing at this place. He had worked as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in Blenheim, but now for the first time he had been called independently to attend a lady who is expecting her child, who's expecting her first child, and she's going to give birth after 20 long years. They have waited. So this child is so precious for Morgans, and the doctor is already contemplating in his own thoughts. He's dejected, he's sad, his mood is not up to the mark, and in that sense of mind, he's going to take this process further. Keep your be vigilant. I'll be asking you questions in between also. So he never thought that this night would change his life throughout. If we do not pay attention, anything can happen to The two men walked in silence until they reached the door of number 12, and then Joe drew up short. I'll not come in, he said, and his voice showed signs of strain. But man, I know you'll do well for us. So these are the dialogues spoken by Mr. Morgan, Mr. Joe Morgan. He says, when they reach the destination, Morgan's family ke ghar ke bahar, then he says, I will not enter. Who says this? Mr. Joe Morgan, because he was hesitant. He was so, you can say, nervous. He was so excited also, but he was so nervous that how is everything going to happen? He says, I will not enter, but I trust you, doctor. You will. See, we people, tabhi kehte hain na, that doctors are considered equivalent to God. This profession is very noble. This is not for the earning money only. It is, a lot of prestige and pressure comes along with it. The higher the post, the more the pressure will be there. So you have to, mentally strong. You have to prepare yourself accordingly. A lot of performance pressure is there. So he says, I will not enter, but I trust you, doctor. You will manage all alone. Fine. Jacqueline, tell me the address. क्या एड्रेस है उनका? Which number they have talked about? जल्दी से. I'll take this chapter further. I'm checking whether you're listening.
12 number.
12 Blainla Terrace. Okay, it's 12 Blainla Terrace. Manjot, why Andrew is sad, beta?
Ma'am, that was a disappointing evening for him because the girl he loves has broken up with him.
Okay, he had bad time.
And also
yes, he is like, okay, fine. Now, Let's continue, okay? Because that will, if I keep on asking you many questions, that will break the interest also. Yes, screen is visible, better. Some part of the screen is going here and there. I find, let me arrange it for you. Now it might be clear. Yes. Clear, beta? Screen is visible. Let's continue from page number 66 now. Okay, 65 we have read. Inside, a narrow stair led up to a small bedroom, clean but poorly furnished and lit only by an oil lamp. So this is the description of Morgan's family house. Then what sort of bedroom they are having? A small bedroom and a narrow staircase. Then clean it is, but poorly furnished, and only an oil lamp is lit up. They're not so rich. They are, they're setting up. It shows that here Mrs. Morgan's mother. Now, character sketch of Mrs. Morgan's mother, beta, very important. Please underline, please underline. A tall, gray-haired woman of nearly 70 and the stout elderly midwife waited beside the patient, watching Andrew's expression as he moved about the room. So two more characters have been introduced here. Mrs. Morgan's mother, she's very tall, gray-haired lady, nearly 70-year-old. And stout means strong. Again, one elderly midwife, jo nurse hoti hai, helper hoti hai, she's already waiting over there. Sometimes, people call midwives also. So she has been waiting over there beside the patient and she was looking at Andrew's expression. Let me make you a cup of tea, doctor. Batch, said the former quickly after a few moments. Andrew smiled faintly. He saw that old woman, wise in experience, realized there must be a period of waiting, that she was afraid he would leave the case, saying he would return later. So Andrew could make out, okay, this elderly, elderly people do have experience. So she was knowing this, okay, though Mrs. Morgan has the labor pains, but it will take some time for the child to take birth. So she thought I should, offer a cup of tea to the doctor so that by the time he will have tea, he will be waiting also. He will not return because they were so curious. They were so scared. So that wise old lady, that 70-year-old, you can say, mother of Mrs. Morgan, she offered a cup of tea to the doctor. And doctor was smart enough to perceive, okay, that's why she's asking me. And that's why he says, don't fret, mother, I'll not run away. तो वो कंफर्म करता है कि आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू गो एनीवेयर बी सो दिस इज द वेरी फर्स्ट साइन ऑफ एंड्रयू that he is able to perceive the expressions of the patient or the people in demand, and you can say the patient's family, and he confirms his presence by saying don't fret, mother. Down in the kitchen he drank the tea which she gave him. Overwrought as he was, he knew he could not snatch even an hour's sleep if he went home. So he was already, stressed, and already it was midnight and he could not even, he knew that he cannot go back and could not sleep at any hour. At any moment, he would need, Morgans would need the help now. Snow, he knew too that the case here would demand all his attention. A queer lethargy of spirit came upon him. He decided to remain until everything was over. So contemplation was going on in his mind ki what to do. Ghar jaunga to so nahi paunga, 1 hour sleep or whatever. He was already rejected. He thought I should stay here only. Queer means strange. Lethargy is like when you do not like to do anything. Alas jisko aa jata hai, laziness. So a strange kind of, lethargy of spirit, like you don't want to go anywhere kind of stuff. It entered and into his mind and he thought, okay, let me be here only. An hour later, he went upstairs again. एक घंटा वो वहीं पे बैठा रहा after having tea in the kitchen. So 1 hour later, he went upstairs again. He noted the progress. He came down once more, sat by the kitchen fire. It was still, except for the rustic of a cinder in the grate and the slow tick-tock of the wall clock. No, there was no another sound. The beat of Morgan's footsteps as he paced in the street outside. The old woman opposite him sat in her black dress, quite motionless, her eyes strangely alive and wise, probing, never leaving his face. So this is the scene. After having tea, 1 hour passed. He went upstairs, checked Mrs. Morgan, and he thought, okay, again, some time is there. Again, he came back downstairs, and he sat over there, and only, you can say, very, because it was the midnight, no more commotion was outside, only footsteps of Mr. Morgan could be heard. Mr. Morgan was continuously walking outside as he was restless too, waiting for the baby. Tick tock of the wall clock, and fireplace was there, and cinder in the grate, uski awaaz aa rahi thi thodi bahut. So that was the only sound which could be heard. The old woman, she was constantly looking at the face, her eyes were not moving much, and she looked very wise. Probing means she was trying to find out by the expressions of doctor that what he's thinking. So she was continuously looking at doctor's face only. So that was the scene. Now beta, doctor will be going back to his own personal problem. This is the thing. अब उसके पास time है, वो नीचे आता है, and he starts thinking about marriages. This is one of the more themes I have not added here. He will think of the idea that most of the marriages, why they are failing, what is the reason behind it, how a couple should live, and all that kind of heavy muddled head. Iska bahut zyada thoughts are going on out of that evening. His thoughts were heavy, muddled. The episode he had witnessed at Cardiff station still obsessed him morbidly. Means buri tarah se he is obsessed with the same incident, is again and again being repeated in his mind about breakup with the Christine. He thought of Bramwell, foolishly devoted to a woman who deceived him sordidly. Now beta, ye kya hai? He is going to remember. He's actually giving a kind of satisfaction to himself by thinking that akela main nahi hu, there are n number of people who have been deceived by other women, and those who are still into the failed marriages. Fine. So he thought of Bramwell. Bramwell is one of the other names. Uska koi acquaintance mein koi person hai, तो उसको सोचता है कि okay, there is one Bramwell who was foolish after a woman, totally devoted, and he also got cheated by her. Then he thinks of Edward Page. You remember the doctor whom he served as an assistant? वो सोचता है कि that Dr. Edward Page, he bound to the shrewish bloodman of Denny, living unhappily apart from his wife. Then he think of that doctor also. He is also not happily married. Even he got apart from his wife because of that failure. Fine. After thinking about these two examples, beta please underline your name, yaad rakhna, because that is a question, that what were the thoughts going on in his mind before that birth took place, and what was he thinking about, whom he was thinking and all. He thought about Bramwell and Edward Page, about his foolishly devotion to women and Edward Page's failure in marriage. His reason told him all that these marriages were dismal failures. So he came to a conclusion. Fine. Andrew came to a conclusion that marriages are dismal failure. It was a conclusion which in his present state made him wince. He wished to consider marriage as an idyllic state. Yes, he could not otherwise consider it with the image of Christine before him. So he was not able to concentrate by thinking of Christine. He cannot, marriages are utter failure according to him. So this is an idyllic state where he thinks that these are like very rarely possible, that anybody is residing in such kind of relationship. Her eyes shining towards him admitted no other conclusion. It was the conflict between his level, doubting mind and his overflowing heart which left him resentful and confused. Why he was confused? Because he loved that girl with all his heart, and that girl dumped him, and he was confused ki, should I talk about the girl he loved, or should he think about that these are just failures of life? It was the conflict. Fine. He was stuck between mind and heart, you can say. Mind says, see the other example, sabhi ne kuch na kuch face kiya hai. Heart is still thinking about the girl. He let his chin sink upon his chest, stretched out his legs, stared broodingly into the fire. He remained like this so long. तो वो अपनी ही contemplation में is thinking and brooding upon that thing, only looking at the fireplace, thinking about Christine and marriages and people who failed in these relationships. And his thoughts were so filled with Christine that he started when the old woman opposite suddenly addressed him. Her meditation had pursued a different course. So here, that woman, she called the doctor. And then he realized, okay, in the present state, I am here. I'm going to, help the Morgan family. Susan said, तो क्या बोला Mrs. Morgan's mother? She says, Susan said not to give her the chloroform. Susan कौन है? Mrs. Morgan's name. Joe Morgan is the name of the husband. Now we got to know that name of the wife who's going to give birth. Uska name is Susan Morgan. Clear? So Mrs. Morgan's mother, jo old lady hai, she is just telling doctor that, my daughter Susan said that do not give chloroform to her if it would harm the baby. See, this also shows the love of the mother. And, she knows that after 20 long years, she's going to give birth. Chloroform kya hota hai? Anybody will tell me? Who will tell me what is chloroform? Why it is used? Would be doctors ho, itna to bataoge mere ko. Who knows? Jaldi se, Ramanjeet Singh, bataiye. What is chloroform? Why we use it?
Ma'am, it is a drug used to set a person unconscious.
Yes, to set a person unconscious, it's a drug. Fine, it shouldn't be taken without, you can say it cannot be taken by us. It is prohibited, but yes, doctors, do use it while operating upon, and you might have heard about anesthesia also. Fine, so one and same thing you can say. So they use such medicines or medications and drugs which are used during the operations, but they have side effects also. These things like chloroform and all these and anesthesia and these medicines have side effects. So there are proper practitioners of it, proper doctors. These days we have proper doctors, those who know how to give the dose to a particular person. More can be very dangerous. A person can remain unconscious or always also. So uski mother ne usko remind karwaya that my daughter Susan Morgan has advised ki mujhe mat dena chloroform. I can bear the pain. Because if I get the chloroform, if I inhale the chloroform, my baby can get it. It can be harmful for the baby. After 20 long years, they're going to have the baby. So she doesn't want to take the risk. She's awful set upon his child doctor. She has been direly waiting for the child doctor batch. Her old eyes warmed at a sudden thought. She added in a low tone, we all are, I fancy. So in a very low tone, she says, ki hum sabhi uski wait kar rahe hain, that child. He collected himself with an effort. Because he was already, distorted in his mind, mentally. He's not strong at this time. बहुत ज़्यादा वो thoughts में muddled up head लेके वो सोचता है कि okay, fine, like I have to concentrate upon what's going on. It won't do any harm. The anesthetic, he said kindly, they will be all right. So doctors know, because we being common people, we do not know them how to use it and what we just know about the, side effects always. He says it will not do any harm to the baby. So it is, if I give it, it can be okay. Here the nurse's voice was heard calling from the top landing. Andrew glanced at the clock, which now showed 3:30. He rose up, went up to the bedroom. He perceived that he might now begin his work. 3:30 हो चुके हैं, 3:30 बजे सुबह के. And that midwife called the doctor, and now it was the time when baby is about to come and birth is going to take place. How they're going to manage it, that we will continue tomorrow. Okay, so this is very interesting chapter. Do join it well in time. We will continue and we will hopefully complete this chapter also. Abhi tak sabko clear hai Sara? I hope there is no doubt. So do read it jitna hua hai, and we will continue tomorrow. Okay, have a nice day, beta.